Disgraced politicians are nothing new. I mean, I remember, I'm sure many of you do from your lifetime, I think I sort of vaguely remember some of them literally, when I was younger. I think at school, I think the first inclination I remember about a disgraced politician was that of the Liberal leader, Jeremy Thorpe. And you know how that turned out. And it was kind of shocking, really, when you first see those things, because you think, oh, right, and you don't really know what they are. You're just too young, aren't you? You know what I mean, though? You've got no idea. And then, of course, you see years later when you grow up a little bit, you think, oh, I see, there's a manipulation going on in here. Now, what's interesting is there's a manipulation right now with somebody that really should know better, but then I'll be really surprised. I'm talking about this woman. That's right, the First Minister of Scotland, of course. That was Nicola Sturgeon. Let me explain. Morning, good to see you, chums. Thank you so much for joining me today. Nice to have your company. Are you all right? I'm not so bad, thank you. I like to share these stories with you simply because obviously working alongside many of these people, it's interesting because their version of events, and you're there and you know this didn't happen, but they're putting it out there because this is their version of events. I remember when Nicola Sturgeon came into the studio to be interviewed by the BBC, and I told you before, she had these expensive designer heels in her handbag, and she insisted on putting them on, and the designer suit and all that sort of stuff, and the makeup and the hair. And you think, hang on a minute, Sunday afternoon, dear, surely you should be focusing on the huge problems that Scotland had and still remains to have at the time. But it's all about them. Right? Likewise, when you look further down the line, you realise now that disgraced Nicola, and that's the only way to describe her, because it's a miracle, many people suggest, that she is wandering around, to put it bluntly. Now, her husband, not so lucky, problems for him, right? You see how they dump when this goes wrong. Interestingly, and as ever, I have to say allegedly, well, Nicola now has this book out, and she's desperately trying to flog this book. Now, what's interesting is, in order to try and do this, she's done many different things. In fact, now she's recently told us that she's non-binary. I always prefer to use very mild myself, but there you go. Now, what's interesting is, suddenly by saying this, she hoped to get a brand new fan base of, the non-binary, whatever woke-aratory rubbish is. I'm not quite sure. But the thing is, that's what she hopes. She's got a talk coming up at the end of the month in London, and tickets, even at £20, are simply not selling out. I mean, why would you want to listen to somebody who clearly has a huge problem with the truth? But now she's upped the ante a little bit more in her book, because she apparently, in the audiences with the Queen at Balmoral, and you have to pity the Queen, as I've said to you before, whatever your thoughts are about the British monarchy, they do have to sit through some dross, and you'd have to be paid an awful lot of money to get through that. You know what I'm saying, chums? Now, what's interesting here is that Nicola apparently claims that when she used to visit the Queen, and they'd be about an hour together, the Queen couldn't wait for the gossip on the likes of Alex Salmond. Now remember, Alex Salmond was the rival to Nicola Sturgeon. This poor man sadly died around about a year ago, and he used to come into the studio actually on a regular basis. And as you know, because you know me well, I take people as I find. He was always happy, nice chappy, polite. Real test of that actually is we'd make him a coffee, he'd sit in the green room, and he'd bring the cup back out and put it on the tray. He knew to clear up after himself. Did Nicola? I'll leave you to work that one out. But here's where it's interesting, because now, of course, he's passed away, the Queen's passed away, and Nicola says, oh, the Queen, oh yeah, she loved all the gossip on Alex Salmond and the indiscretions. Now, I could tell you 100% as a fact, that is a total lie. And I know that from the fact that the people that worked around the Queen, she would never have got in that political stance. I know many people that have sat, former Prime Ministers, Boris Johnson, David Cameron, that have sat opposite the Queen, and they've told me everything about what she talked about. And it was mainly business, They may talk about, say, the inclement weather, but it was very, very structured. There was not really a friendliness, because the problem is that she had other things to attend to. So quite where Nicola gets these amazing stories about, oh, suddenly the Queen, yeah, she just loved the gossip. Do remember, Nicola has history, is what I would say. And on top of all of that, remember also that sadly, the two people that she claims that this thing happened with, well, guess what? They're no longer with us, and Nicola is, giving her a free rein to suddenly remember things that the Queen said to her in private. Now, she's dressed it up in the nicest possible way, but nonetheless, Do you believe her? Neil Sean, Kensington, London.